can see this graph here. You see the rising newsprint recovery rate, now at a world's best 76% of paper that comes into Australia, either produced or comes into Australia, is recovered again. And this ranks much higher than the US, around 60%, much higher than Europe, which are in the high 60s. And this is a number and a recovering rate to which we can all be very proud of. Let's turn to water. And we find for us the use of water sustainably is really focused on our mill at Albury, because Albury is centred in the middle of the Murray Basin, and we know the Murray Basin is in crisis. And this crisis has driven big reductions in water allocations, massive improvements at Albury to now position this mill as our most water efficient mill globally. This has been achieved by rebuilds in 1993 and 2006, where we closed up water circuits in the mill, installation of hydraulic presses, pulp presses to recover water, but most importantly it's really the hourly, the daily, the weekly, the monthly focus on water, how we use water. So now the water use at Albury is the best in the Norske Skog world and best in class in the industry. And also compared to the surrounding water uses in the Murray Basin, horticulture and agriculture, paper making is a much less intense user of water, which much higher value add and more jobs per megalitre used. And of the water we do use, 80% of this water is cleaned and returned to the environment again. Carbon, a very current issue and a complex issue. Our carbon footprint globally and in Australasia really resides around our pulp and paper production, as you see here. And of this, almost all the carbon comes from the purchase of energy and the generation of energy, because paper making is an energy intensive business. You can see this in this slide. Albury has the highest carbon content, which comes from the energy purchases from the Australian grid. It reflects the high carbon content of Australian coal-fired energy. Boyer is in a hydro state, so has lower overall carbon footprint, although with some coal-fired steam generation on site. Tasman is lower again, reflecting the reliance on hydro on the national grid and the local geothermal supply. Albury's position in particular represents a challenge for us, not only for us but for Australia. Where is the renewable energy coming from? This is currently the Achilles heel of sustainability in Australia, our reliance on coal. And when you stand back and look at the industrial forest industry as a whole globally, you see a different perspective. And overall, this picture shows that the global industrial forest industry is a net absorber of carbon. On the left-hand side is the capture of carbon through forestation, reforestation, regrowth. On the right-hand side is the release of carbon through the manufacture of products and harvesting. Basically, these days, essentially, we cut down, we grow more than we cut down. And this represents and reflects a global trend for increasing plantation or industrial forestry. However, when you take into account the deforestation outside the industrial forest industry, you get a different picture. And you see there massive deforestation, mostly in the tropics, and this is the legal logging of tropical rainforests, 0.2% per annum deforestation, and you see there that results in a massive net carbon emission. And this is one of the biggest climate change issues that the world faces. How can we increase the degree of certification, increase the legality, and put more and more of the global forestry estate, particularly the tropical rainforest estate, under sustainable management? And Norske Skog and most papermaking companies, and publishers for that matter, have been very focused on reducing their carbon footprint. For us, we've reduced our carbon footprint 25% from 1990 to 2006. Things like recovering waste heat, reducing our waste, improving our machine efficiencies, our energy efficiency. Plus, we have some very aggressive targets in front of us. These targets have been set by our global owner and also adopted locally. And the target is again to reduce 25% from 2006 to 2020. It's a pretty aggressive target, so how do we intend to achieve them? Well, firstly, and I think in some ways most importantly, it's about a continuous improvement as a way of working. Every hour, every day, every week, every month, we build a culture of preservation of the environment and preservation of carbon. The way we use electric motors, the way we recover heat, the way we run our machines, what we do with our waste, you can always constantly improve. And also we go for the big step changes as well. The biggest step change we're looking at the moment is a possibility of a biomass and gas cogeneration boiler producing steam and half of Albury's electricity needs. And we're in the stage of looking at the business case for this project. If we can pull this off, this will be a very positive environmental investment for Albury, for New South Wales and for Australia. Of course, the efforts to rise to the carbon challenge are widespread, with many of our suppliers and customer partners on a similar journey. Here, Borders, K&S, our distribution partners, are experimenting with biodiesel to reduce their carbon footprint. And we've heard about News Limited 1 Degree platform. The point is that these are collaborative efforts across the entire supply chain. And in that regard, they have the capacity to unite us and to cause us to work even more closely together and more aggressively for similar environmental ends. In this presentation, I've tried to redress the imbalance between reputation and reality. Reputationally, this is how some try to portray us: deforesting, pillaging the national environment, taking from future generations to spend on ourselves. The reality is that the forest industry is actually carbon positive, has the capacity to be sustainable, and is on the positive side of the ledger for climate change. I think we've got a better story than we've told to date. So in summary, overall, collectively, I think we've now got a much better and even a good story to tell. The story is that this is an inherently sustainable industry. We use waste wood and waste paper, both which represent captured carbon, with a highly efficient, world-class use of water, to make a product which, by the way, makes a fundamental contribution to the proper functioning of our democracy. Not only that, but by working together, this performance is improving all the time, with even more opportunities for innovation in front of us. Thanks for listening, and I'm happy to take some questions.